Okay. Hello, my name is Holly Smith with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. The date is October 22nd, 2020, and today I am interviewing
Elaine Baumgartner.
Thank you for being here with me, Elaine.
You're welcome.
I guess to start off, we will go with when and where were you born?
I was born on February 13th, 1944, in Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, in Newark.
Yes.
Were you born into a Catholic family?
Yes, I was.
Tell me a little bit about how your family related or how you guys practiced.
My dad seldom went to Mass when I was a child, which bothered me very much. But my mother, we went with my mother. I had an older sister and a younger brother. And we attended Mass. We walked about 3 blocks to the church around the corner and down the street from us.
You went weekly?
Yes, every Sunday we went to church. And on holy days, of course.
Was this, I'm not particularly familiar with Newark. Is this a mostly Protestant community that you were part of?
No, Newark is a big city and it is sectioned off. There was a predominantly Italian Catholics in one area, and there was a Jewish neighborhood, and there was a Polish neighborhood, and everything else in between. It was a big city.
And so it was mostly Catholics in one area that you were commonly.
There were many Catholics, yes. In fact, I only know of one other non-Catholic church in my area as a child. This is what I remember. I had a friend who went to the Lutheran church. And I also had a friend who was Jewish who lived right across the street from our Catholic church. But I don't know where she went to temple or if she did.
So how often did you find yourself interacting with these non-Catholic communities when you were growing up?
I went to a public school frequently.
Was religion ever brought up there?
Occasionally I discuss it with my Jewish friend, but it was not a big topic. When you're growing up, you don't really think about that, especially since most of my friends were Catholic.
Okay. So this, it was a very different part of your life from going to church was one thing, and then going to school was a completely different experience for you in terms of the people you talked to?
Not really. The children I went to school with were mostly Catholic, and we went to the same Catholic church.
Okay.
We went to the same religion classes.
Religion class, like in public school?
No. We went to the Catholic school. There was a Catholic school associated with my church at the time. And we went to religion classes because I was in a public school. Catholic children were required to do religion classes at the church, or in this case, at the school.
So because you weren't going to this Catholic school, you were taking those religion classes. Could you tell me a little bit about what you learned in these religious classes?
About the religious classes that I went to as a child?
Yes.
We went once a week, usually in the afternoon after school, and we learned our religion from the Catholic. It was called now it's called the confirmation of Christianity, but I think it was, I don't know what it was called, but it was a set rules. We learned certain prayers, and we prepared for our sacraments, which were received about 8 years old, and then about 12, 13 years old.
So you were very prepared for every step of this process in Catholicism?
I believe I was. A little different. It changed as I got older, and as we go on, I'll explain that part to you.
Well, you could go ahead and explain now if you.
Okay. Well, I ended up. Let's see. I taught in public schools for 2 in New Jersey, 2 years in Florida, and then my husband took went to school in California, which we went out in about August, and the only job I can get teaching was in a Catholic school, and that was my first experience teaching in a Catholic school, and it was very interesting, and I sort of loved it. And then we came back to Gainesville, and I could not get a job in the public schools in Gainesville at the time. This was 76. And I ended up doing a little subbing. I did a little bit of, I did a teaching assistant for a while. And it was interesting how I found my Catholic school. I wasn't aware there was a Catholic school. We lived on this side. The Catholic school in Gainesville, one of the Catholic schools, the original Catholic school, was on the east side. I had a child in my class that I knew. I would see him at church, and he had older brothers and sisters. I never saw the older brothers and sisters. He was a kindergartner. So I talked to his mom. I said, why don't I see your older children? She said, oh, they go to the Catholic school. And I talked to her about it, and I went over there and applied for a job, and I got a teaching job the next school year with the Catholic school. And I spent 25 years at St. Patrick's School teaching, and I also became a principal at the time, administrator.
Okay. And how long was it from when you came to Gainesville to when you started working at that school?
Let's see, we came in 76, 2 years about. And I did some work for the university. I was a temp for the university, and I was an assistant in the public schools for a while.
Okay.
In between those 2 years.
Let's take a step back there for a second. So you said that you were in New Jersey.
Right.
And, did you meet your husband there?
Yes, we met down the shore at the beach, and he was going to school, and I was in college. Both of us were in college. And then after we married, after we went together for about 3 years, then we married, and we lived in New Jersey for a year, and he wanted to go to Florida. So he found a job. He took a job in Florida, and we moved to Florida, and we've been here ever since, except for a stint out in California where he got his doctorate.
And what were you studying in college when you met him?
I was in education.
Okay, yeah. So did you know from a young age that you wanted to go into teaching?
I didn't hear the middle. You cut off for a minute.
Did you know from a young age that you wanted to go into teaching?
I did. I thought originally in high school, I was toying with the idea of being a nurse, but I did some volunteer work in a hospital, and it was a children's hospital, which probably was a mistake because I'd come home very depressed, and I decided I can't do this. I've got to work with healthy children. So that's when I decided to go into teaching.
Do you feel like maybe how did your faith inform your decision to work at this hospital? Was that an influence with that?
I don't think it was. It was something we did as a club at the high school, and that's how I got involved with a club at the high school. My religion was mostly Sunday mornings, as at that age. I prayed, of course, but mostly it was Sunday mornings and holy days.
Okay. So this high school that you went to, it was the same one that you told me about earlier, where it was secular and separate from.
Yeah, it was the same thing as my elementary. It was a public high school.
So you went there, you did this hospital experience, you decided you wanted to go into teaching. Could you tell me a little bit, where the college that you went to, was that also in Newark?
Yeah, well, it was originally in Newark. It moved to a suburb. So it was in New Jersey. It was about a 40-minute drive from my home. And I did not stay at the college I drove. I was a commuter.
While you were there, was there a church available to you while you were in college?
Was my local church when we lived, wherever we lived, we went to our local parish. So I did not live at the college.
You stayed at the same church that you went to?
Until we moved, and we moved to a suburb of Newark, And I found the closest church there, and that's where we attended church. That's where we got married.
Oh, okay. Um, so what was your husband studying at college?
My husband was studying pharmacy, and uh, he took a year longer because he got a Bachelor of Pharmacy plus a Bachelor of Science degree. And then in Florida, he was working at a hospital and decided he wanted to go on with his education. He got his master's in education in Florida and then decided to go for a doctorate. And that's how we ended up in California. He got a doctorate at University of the Pacific.
So it was Newark, Florida, California. Florida.
California was a very short a year. He had a year college education there where he got his doctorate of clinical pharmacy.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that while you were in California, you were trying to get a job.
Well, he was going to school, so I planned on working. So I was trying to get a teaching job, and there was an opening in the Catholic school, which suited me, and that's where I was my first experience with as a teacher in a Catholic school.
Could you tell me a little bit more? Like, are there any stories that you remember from teaching there?
It was very short. I did not complete the year because my mother passed away in New Jersey at the time, which was very traumatic. So I left. But I had taken over a position. We got there in August. End of August, I guess. A teacher had to leave, and they had my application. As soon as I got there, I went to the I guess it was the superintendent of education there, and she said a Catholic school was looking for a third grade teacher. So I had taught first and kindergarten in Florida. So they said, "Would you be willing to teach third?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So I filled in that position. I took over the position, and it was a wonderful experience because I had never had the chance to, be involved in my faith plus part of teaching. And I just loved it. And I guess I did pretty well. They sent me the kids' exams at the end and a little necklace that said #1. They said, "You turn this class around." So I guess I did a pretty good job.
That's sweet.
They were very sweet. I enjoyed it.
Well, having come from like a public school and then teaching at a Catholic school, did you notice any differences as soon as you started teaching?
Uh, Not the teaching so much as the atmosphere. The atmosphere in the Catholic school was one of family, friendly, always uplifting. Uh, that's what struck me as a difference.
Could you expand a bit more on like how you felt it was different?
Um, well, I was very relieved to be. I grew up in a public school where I was telling my husband the other day, we sang hymns. On Friday, we would have an assembly. It was a large school in Newark, and there were a lot of children, a lot of classes, and we would have a Friday morning assembly. The whole school would gather, and after a prayer, we said a prayer. Usually the principal would read the prayer, and then we'd sing a hymn. So, and then as things changed and we couldn't do this and we couldn't do that, it was a little different. I was getting used to the public schools, but it was such a relief to be able to take my faith and bring it into a lesson even. Not only did we pray in the morning and pray before lunch and pray before we left the school classroom, we also were able to talk about it. And one of the courses was religion, which I was required to teach, which opened my mind totally to my religion. As I was saying, I was a Sunday morning Catholic until I don't know, I have a little story about my son that I thought might be interesting. My son was about 4 and he was attending a Bible study in our little town in DeLand, Florida. And he would go in the mornings and bring his work home, and he had a picture of Jesus and the children around him, and he had colored it. And I said, "Oh, and who's that?" And he said, "Those are my friends." And I said, "Well, who's the man?" And he said, "That's my friend." I said, "Friend who?" And he said, "That's my friend, Jesus." And it just hit me all of a sudden that there's my 4-year-old telling me this for his friend is Jesus, and here am I, 30 something, and was not aware that this child was, that Jesus was my friend. I never, it just totally struck me. And I thought that was an interesting part. And then when I got the job in the Catholic school, it just brought it all together.
So that moment with your son, that was what really kind of changed how you wanted to implement religion and like.
I think it did. I think it just moved me totally. And I realized that I hadn't even touched the surface of my faith.
How did you go about trying to interact more with your faith after that, after you had that experience?
Well, as I said, when he was 6, 2 years later, we went to California where I taught in a Catholic school, and that just brought everything together for me. I wasn't able to do too much because I was working and had 2 children. So I was limited to what I could do outside the classroom, but it remained it made a big impression on me.
Tell me a little bit, like when did you say your son was born?
My son was born in 1969.
And was that while you were still in New Jersey or Florida?
No, we moved to Florida. We weren't even married a year when we moved to Florida. He took a job at a small hospital in DeLand, and I taught kindergarten till I had my son, and then my son, and then I had my daughter 2 years later. So by the time let's say I had Mark at 25 and Susan at 27, so I had 2 little ones. We have, you're asking about other involvement in the church besides my teaching.
If you want to talk about that, I'd love to hear it.
My husband and I did a marriage encounter, which was for people married who just wanted to strengthen their marriage. That's a part of the church. They have I guess it's like a little, I think it was a weekend. Yes, it was a weekend. And then we also did Cursillo, Cursillo. It was a Spanish movement, a lay Spanish movement that became very popular. And it was like a weekend retreat where you go, it's a women's weekend and a men's weekend, it's separate. You go there and it's like any retreat. Are you familiar with retreats?
I have not personally been on one.
Well, it's a intensive prayer, and you are a lot of time to meditate and reflect. And it's the purpose is to get closer and more deeper in your faith. It was a wonderful experience. In fact, they still had gotten together afterwards. And we see many of our friends. In fact, I have several friends now in the group I am in. I'm in a group which is associated with the Sisters of St. Joseph out of St. Augustine. And many of the Cursillo people are in that group. Okay.
And you started these retreats shortly after you came to Florida the first time?
No, this was in Gainesville. We did this. I'm getting hints from my IT man over here, my husband. I guess, I can't remember. Tom, do you remember the year we did that? It was, the children were older, so it would have to be in the 80s, maybe early 90s.
Family Cursillo?
No, the Cursillo, the adult Cursillo.
Family was.
We did a family weekend also with our children, which was nice. So we've done, right now, we are concentrating on as I said, the Sisters of St. Joseph. We're associates of it, and we support them in prayer and help out anywhere we can with them.
When your family started like growing up and like starting to like approach the age of like where they start going to school and everything, how did that how did you
how did I bring my faith to them?
Yeah.
Well, they went to public school for a year, and then I got a job at St. Patrick's the second year we were here, and they went to the Catholic school there. So they were immersed in their faith all the way up to 8th grade. At that time, we did not have a high school, a Catholic high school. So they went to the public high school. And we talked about possibly going to Jacksonville where there was a high school, but that was not practical for us. And they did fine.
Were your children going to church regularly as you did when you were growing up?
They do not attend regularly like we do.
Was that like a family decision or?
Oh no, they're adults. They make their own decisions.
Oh, you mean now?
Oh yeah, now they went to church when they lived at home. We all went to church together every Sunday or Saturday night.
Um,
And when they come home, we all go to church together.
Do you think maybe part of that decision to raise your children with the same like importance of faith, might that have come from like your religious upbringing?
I would say yes. I would say, plus my belief in my faith and how important it is for children growing up. All their children have been baptized. And as I said, when we're all together, we go to Mass, we go to church.
It's very, that actually is very similar to what my grandparents do because they're Catholic as well. So I know what you mean. I guess that translates to my next question. Where do you think now when your children as adults, as they're coming home, that going to church is a much more like culturally significant or family significant activity for them?
I think it's more family significant than cultural.
Could you expand a bit more on like how nowadays when they're coming home, how you guys go about like praying and everything?
We always pray before meals. We do special prayers for things that are needed. My grandson was taking the ACTs Tuesday, and we prayed for him. My husband and I did because it was on a Tuesday. And that's probably the most thing we do is pray before meals together.
Well, I hope your grandson did well in his ACT.
I'm sure he did. He's an A student, so I assume he did well. I asked him how he did. He said, it was okay. So it was funny though. I said, well, I prayed for you. He said, well, did you stop praying when I got to the math? He said, the end of the math was a little tough. He said, well, I prayed the whole time for you. So he's a riot, but they're fun.
It seems like there is still an appreciation for like the efforts you guys put forward in terms of like praying for them.
I believe there is. I think they appreciate it. And we tell them, I know when they have decisions and stuff to make, we'll always tell them to pray about it. And they say, sure, we always do. So I know they're praying. They may not pray in community at church, but I know they pray. So, and that it comes from not only us, but their schooling too, I think.
Now, how old are you? Like, I know that your grandson, he's probably like a senior in high school. He's taking the ACT. Your other grandchildren, how old are they?
I have two 17-year-old boys. One's a senior, one's a junior. Then the next one is 16, and he is a junior also. And then the baby is 15, and he's a freshman.
The baby.
They're all boys. Yeah, the baby's 15. He's all boys.
And they all kind of, do they all kind of speak, or do they all kind of feel the same way about like family prayer and everything when you guys come together?
I think so. Two of them are Lutheran, and they were baptized in the Lutheran Church. We are godparents to all four of them. So even the Lutheran children we baptized, and I think they do. I think they. I don't think it's just with us. What I'm saying.
You mean like they're getting like other family members, maybe from different religions, they're also praying with them?
I think that's a possibility. I'm not real sure. I know they're in their family. They pray sometimes for at dinner. I know when we're there, we definitely pray. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, You said you came to Gainesville in 1976.
Correct.
Okay, and could you explain a little bit like how might Gainesville be different today than like what you saw when you?
Oh my gosh. We lived in the apartments in back of the mall, which was at the time, it wasn't a mall, it was a field of trees. It was a forest like. We lived there. The growth has been unbelievable. Since we moved here, when we moved here, there were two Catholic churches. Now there are four Catholic churches. So it's grown exponentially. The university has grown, of course, and the traffic has grown. uh, Other than that, I don't. I think it's still a nice little town.
Were you very quick to find St. Patrick's Church after you came here?
No, no, we moved here and we went to the closest church, which was Holy Faith. And we were there for a long time. Even when I got a job at St. Patrick's, we continued at Holy Faith because we live in the Southwest and the St. Patrick's Church is in the Northeast. So it was like a whole drive. So we just stayed at our church. And then my son decided when the kids got older and in high school, we moved to the student center. And my son played guitar in the mass, the folk mass there. And we got them involved there. So, and then when they left, we go to any mass we feel comfortable with at this point. Now with the COVID, we're doing streaming masses, which has been very interesting.
Do you have any interesting stories from the Zoom masses?
The one we like best, we've been to those in Canada, Texas, Las Vegas. Where else, Tom?
What's that?
The masses. Our favorite in China. We had a China mass.
Yeah.
We did one from China, which was really interesting. But our favorite mass is the teen mass, which comes from, I believe, the Boston area, Massachusetts somewhere.
Cruises.
And that is the only interesting thing is they sing and his homilies are for the children. He's an excellent priest. He does he's down to earth and he reaches people. So we enjoy that. We've been to churches in every country we've visited. We've been to a mass on a cruise. It's interesting. The Catholic Church is universal, as they say.
So these masses that you've done in different countries did you plan on, was this something that you wanted to do for a while?
Well, when we always try to go to mass wherever we are. So if we could, we usually end up finding a mass in the countries, even in China, we went to mass. Pardon?
Jamaica.
Oh, Jamaica, yeah. The ones that are, when we travel, it's really fun because the first one we went to on our honeymoon was Hawaii, and it's not a foreign country, but to us it was. And that was 53 years ago. And they sang with a ukulele. It was just beautiful. It was so moving to us. So that's why we go and we enjoy. The mass is the same. We've even attended a Spanish mass because we couldn't find a English one. So, but the ritual is the same. You go through the same steps.
So you mentioned like the ukulele in Hawaii. And the rituals are very similar, but is there any other big differences that you've noticed between like countries in these churches?
Where were we where we stood up? There was one, was that the Orthodox church? I don't remember, but I think one, they don't have pews in the Orthodox churches, and we may have either attended one, but it wasn't our mass, but it was close because it's Orthodox Catholic from the Cyrillic countries there. But most of it is the same, and I think we'd miss going.
Maybe Russia.
Yeah, well, that's why I said I think it was in Russia where we had to stand for mass.
Now, When you went to all like were these countries like vacations that you were going on?
No, mostly the times we went to the foreign countries, Tom, my husband was speaking. He's a clinical pharmacist, and uh, he does a lot of speaking on micronutrition.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he's very interesting. So we did a lot of traveling like that. We went especially we went to Russia and China through People to People. Have you ever heard of that association? I think President Eisenhower put it into play, and it was like a bonding with different countries. So we went on two medical groups, medical educational groups to those two countries. And you get together with the doctors, nurses, and teachers in those countries, and you share.
Now, is your husband was he also raised Catholic?
Uh, yes, he was born Catholic and went to Catholic school for a short time, and then his father remarried, and he went to a Protestant church for a while, and then when he was in college, he decided he wanted to complete his Catholic uh, experience, and he took a sacrament there when he was older. And I met him. He was Catholic when I met him.
So this was a very like there was trying to think about what it was. I guess that going to church for the two of you must be very. Is it very like is it important to your relationship that you've always been going to these same places, these same churches?
I believe it is. I think it's just bonded us closer and made our marriage stronger, I believe.
Now, I feel like we've just gone over the world, and now I'm trying to bring us back to Gainesville. No,
Sorry.
no. I love hearing about it. It's just when so what. Yeah, I know that you said when you came to Gainesville, you were on like a different side of town from St. Patrick's. So what
Yes.
was it that brought you to St. Patrick's?
Uh, when we went to the church closest to us, and I saw one of the students. I was a teaching assistant at Terwilliger, which was right next to our apartments when we lived in the Oaks apartments. And I would never, then at church, I would see he had older brothers and sisters, and I didn't ever see them at school. So I asked the mother, and she said they went to a Catholic school. And she told me where it was on the other side of town in the Northeast. And I went out there and put an application in. And I got the teaching job there, fifth grade. Fifth grade homeroom, teaching science to fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders.
So, were you like really looking forward to the opportunity to teach at a Catholic school again?
Oh, yeah, because I had that experience in California the one year. Right before we moved to Gainesville, I had that experience, and I just loved it. So I was very anxious to get involved there.
Fifth grade science homeroom?
Fifth grade homeroom. I taught science to fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. All the middle school, basically.
Do you in teaching at a Catholic school now, do you think that like a lot has changed versus like back when you were, I know that you went to a secular school, but do you think the education for Catholics might have been a lot different when you were growing up?
I wouldn't know about it back then when I was a child, but I know it was rather stringent, and the expectations were high. And I think the thing that impressed me the most was the parent involvement in the Catholic schools. And it didn't happen at the beginning. When I went there, we had very little parent involvement. They would only help with fundraising and stuff like that. But once, well, as things changed, I think it changed all over for education. I think there was more parent involvement.
Uh, so more parent involvement in a Catholic school versus like a non-Catholic school?
Um, I I would probably say that because first of all the Catholic school requires a lot more hands-on help. We had a lot of volunteers because we couldn't pay teaching assistants and things like that. So there was always a parent to help out, which was good.
Are there any parents that you met while you were a teacher that like you stayed friends with even after a while?
Absolutely. My first fifth grade, I had a young man whose mother would bring, we had 8 classes at the time, 4 on the second floor, 4 on the first floor, grades 1 through 8. And he was in fifth grade, and she would bring a box of tissues for every class, not only my class, every class. And she was just, everybody knew her. She was so sweet. She helped in the lunchroom. She would clean the tables and stuff like that. She took the bus everywhere. She didn't drive. And then I had him again in fifth, seventh, eighth grade. I guess I had him for the other subjects. And she found out I was Italian and she was Italian. And she's from New York. I'm from New Jersey. And we just bonded. And she's still my friend. I just talked to her today. I call her every day pretty much. Plus, we have lots of people that, I don't know, I guess the parents there become so involved that they have friendships. They make friendships and they continue. We have a group that meets, we used to meet twice a year for dinner somewhere. And we used to get together at our homes frequently. Now that we're older, we go out. But it's still the same parents of the students.
That's very nice.
It is. It was like, as I said, it was like a family. In fact, I still go back. I haven't been back to the school now because of the COVID forever. But I go back and I bring treats for the teachers and visit. All the people who are still there. There's a lot of changes. I've been out of the school now 15 years.
And they all still know about you.
Pardon?
All the parents still
a lot of them, in fact, when I go back, it's interesting. A couple of the teachers there have been my students. And a lot of the parents of the children have been my students. So it's rather interesting. It's like a big family, as I said.
Now you mentioned like this one friend that you got close to, you bonded over being Italian. I'm Italian myself and Catholic, so I know that like there's a lot of intersection there. Was that was there a large demographic of Italian people at the school that you were teaching at?
No, there was not. In fact, when I got to Florida, it was rather culture shock for me because I grew up in a neighborhood. I went to a high school that was mostly Italian Catholics. So we had a cathedral right across the street from our school. And I moved to a small town, DeLand, Florida, when we moved to Florida. And it was really a shock for me. It took me a while to get used to it.
How was that like? Could you elaborate a little bit more on like the culture shock that you were experiencing?
Well, first of all, I came from Newark, which is a big city, and I moved to Bloomfield, which was a suburb, but still big. And the metropolitan area of New York, New Jersey is humongous. There are, your neighbors pretty much. When I moved to DeLand, it was like everybody knew everybody. It was like a little town. It was a little town. I guess there must have been 10,000 people when we moved there. So it was rather strange. And it was when I went to, my first job there was in Dillian Springs, which was like a 15-minute drive to a suburb of DeLand, which was really country. And it was very different. I had one experience. I don't know, were you born in Florida?
I was.
Well, my kids were too, but the first time I went to the lunchroom, I took my children to the lunchroom in this new school in this little town. And I told the lunchroom lady, I said, I don't want those beans. She said, sweetie, where are you from? Those ain't beans. Those are black-eyed peas. And it was just such a shock to me. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much. It was fun. It was a fun experience. And every once in a while, I still get a surprise living in Florida. But I've been here longer than anywhere else, so I'm used to it.
I know from like my family that food is a very big deal. Even, coming from here, going up north, like I'll be like, what kind of, they have 6 different pans of pasta. And I'm like, how can you differentiate between these?
Yeah, it's different, but you adjust. And we did. My husband loves it. He loves the heat. Uh, I'm not wild about the heat, but I manage.
So you said at the school that you were teaching at, I mean, it's very apparent that you have these very strong relationships with the students and the teachers. Did you see like these same people when you went to mass on Sundays?
When I went to, yes, because it was the only Catholic school in Gainesville when I started working there. And I think it was the only Catholic school. Oh, do you have any idea when Queen of Peace began, Tom? I don't know, but it had to be, we had to be, yeah, it had to be 10, 15 years that we were just the only school in Gainesville, the only Catholic school. So we had, wherever you went to church, there were parents from there. In fact, we had parents coming from Stark, Melrose, Archer, Alachua. So it was quite interesting because we had this little family here, but when you went to church, you'd see this one or that one or different people. And we had a tendency to go to different churches. So for a while there, the school was inter-parish, which meant 4 parishes were helping the school. And I tried to make my rounds to different churches just so we could see the parents and the children could see me, try to be a model.
Oh. Um, was like in your experience as like someone who like when you were a kid and you just attended Catholic church on Sundays, um, how is that different from like you going to church as a teacher and having this new role as like a model for your students?
That's hard to compare because as a child, your world is encompassed in much smaller. As you grow, you branch out and you make more associations and different purposes, and you're not thinking only about me, which is what kids usually do. So it's hard to judge. But looking back at my experience, the church is so much more welcoming now than it was. It always, especially as a child, the church was mysterious. First of all, they said Mass in Latin, which you had no clue about. The priest he always had his back to you. It was very different. As the Catholic Church grew, we did, and for one, there are people who do not care for the new changes in the church, but I, for one, loved it. You could understand the Mass, you knew what he was saying, and it felt like family. And also the priests became very much more involved in their parish.
Did you, when you started going to church in Gainesville, did you form like stronger relationships with the pastors than you would have like at other churches?
No, I actually didn't. Not until I got associated with the school did I become closer to them.
Are there any like pastors or preachers that you met that influenced how you
The pastor at St. Patrick's, Father Roland Julian, still lives in Gainesville. He's retired now. My husband keeps in touch with him every other week to check on his health and how he's doing. For a while before the COVID, he'd go over to his apartment and fix things up and make sure things were all working properly. He brought a new perspective to me for a priest. He is a very holy man, and he just made the priesthood come alive for me. And then we have other priests. They all have their own personalities, and we've had a lot of different ones. And to me, as a kid, even my parents always felt like the priests were far away. They were never part of us. Today's priests are now a lot more friendly, I would say, and able to meet with people. And I think it's a good thing for the church.
Does your ability to like be more friendly with the pastors does that contribute to that more welcoming atmosphere that you were talking about earlier?
Absolutely, yes.
Back to Father Julian, you said that your husband will go over to his apartment sometimes and like make sure things are working okay?
Yeah, well, we would help him with his computer, and also sometimes there was something not working. A knob on the sink may have been leaking, or the toilet flusher wasn't properly working. And my husband's very handy, and he would go over there and help him out, so he wouldn't have to call somebody. But now we don't go anywhere, so we call him on the phone, though he talks to him regularly.
Husband sounds like he dabbles in just about everything.
He is a gem, let me tell you. I've been blessed many times over.
That's sweet. So this you met Father Julian like at Mass, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, we met him at the school. He was the pastor at St. Patrick's when I was at St. Patrick's School. And we would have to work together, of course. And that's how we got to, and as our relationship grew, he was there the whole time I was there. And I was there for 25 years. First couple of years, there was a Monsignor there, but he came in after. So I'd say in my 25 years at St. Patrick's, he was probably there 23.
Okay. And as having like taught at St. Patrick's and then going to St. Patrick's as a worshiper, how does that like affect your relationship with like, because you work with him at the school and then you pray with him. Does that affect your relationship at all?
Not at all. Probably just binds it, makes it stronger. And we used to, at St. Patrick's, we took our children to Mass once a week. So your class would go to church once a week, and he'd be, usually he would be the principal priest at the Masses. So.
Sounds like a very tight-knit community where everyone's seeing the same people all the time.
It certainly was. It was. And I think it still is pretty much. It's a lot has changed in the 15 years since I've been gone, but it's still, you still get that warm, friendly feeling. The children are happy to see you, even if they don't know you, which a lot of them don't at this point, but they're still a wonderful home-like atmosphere there.
Is that something that you think has been constant since you've come to St. Patrick's?
Yes, I think so. Most of the time, we've had a few glitches, if you know what I mean. We had the nuns left at a certain point, and we had a couple of, and then I took over after the nuns left, and I was there for 13 years. And then I retired, and we had two principals in between, and it was a little rocky. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you why or what happened. But then they hired another principal who used to be my social studies teacher, and he seems to be doing a beautiful job.
That's good. Pardon me. I had a train of thought and then just.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
Am I talking too much?
No, absolutely not. I'm just enthralled by your story, you know. So these little blips in the churches, like the atmosphere of it, did you feel like that had like a tangible impact on like how people, how Gainesville was relating to this church?
No, I don't think Gainesville had a lot of interaction with the church. I know when Father Julian came on board, he became active in the northeast part of town. He did a lot inter church, I don't know what you call it, interfaith. He was part of the interfaith council. He met with people. He brought speakers. So I think once he became pastor, he had a lot more interaction with Gainesville than there had been.
Interesting. So he really affected how Gainesville like related to St. Patrick's, didn't he?
I think so. I think he would be the major impetus in the connection with Gainesville. As I said, when I got there, I didn't even know St. Patrick existed. So it was very low key.
As it became less like low key, did you notice any changes within the church as it started to relate differently with the city?
I can't speak for the church, but I could speak for the school. We grew a lot with more interaction. More people were aware of us. More people uh, wanted what we had offered, what we had to offer, and we grew a lot.
Was this happening as you were teaching there?
Yes.
So
And
how
then, and then we also, in fact, we got so big. That was the impetus to build a school on the other side, in the Southwest. So Queen of Peace Elementary School, Queen of Peace Academy is now part of our diocese and we also have a high school now, which also resulted in I think a lot of people in Gainesville saw the need and supported the need for Catholic schools.
was this influx of students before like the new schools were established? Did that affect like your teaching process at all?
Uh, I don't know. As a teacher, I was aware, and when I started out, we had 40 children in a classroom, which is a lot of students. And as we worked through, it was very manageable, hard for the teacher, a lot more work. But as we grew, we expanded and we ended up having 2 classes of each grade, which helped a great deal and made more people want to come there, because that was one of the main reasons people didn't want to put their kids in our school, because there were 40 kids in a class. And this was early when I started teaching there in the 70s, the early 80s.
So, so this just started like as soon as you started. That's when that growth period hit.
After I started, I think we started adding when we realized how full we were. I was still teaching when we built an addition to the main building, and we added a kindergarten, which we never had. So then we had kindergarten, and then we moved up. And as we got bigger, when you were having 53 kids wanting to get in, registering, you had to have 2 classes. So we put portables up, and then we built. When I started in 95 as principal, I became a principal in 95. Was it 92? I'm sorry. And that was when we broke ground for the middle school classrooms and gymnasium and cafeteria. That was all in one big building. We built that. And then we were able to expand with portables. When the kindergarten got to be too big, there would be 2 first grades and then 2 second grades. We moved up like that with portables. We still have the portables.
So before all this growth happened, it was like, what did the school look like physically before all of that happened?
The school was built in like a small L. The front was the office, and then there was maybe a T, because the library was on the east side. Nope, on the north side. So you pull into the driveway, and there's the office area, a long hallway with 8 classes. This is when I first started. 4 classes on the bottom, 4 classes on the second floor, and a library opposite the office.
And then, like now, it looks like a gym, portables.
Now in the back, there is this huge building. It has a gymnasium and a cafeteria and 7 classrooms, plus office areas for the teachers.
Wow.
And then the portables are all in the front.
And how long did this all happen over? Like, what was the
Little by little. First of all, there was just the original school, and when I got there, besides the office area and the library, in the back there was what they called like a parish center. It was a big room, really. And then as we grew, we converted that to an art room, and then, and this, I can't tell you the timeline. I should have kept a timeline. It would have been interesting. Then we had pre-K. We added pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and it just kept growing. As Gainesville grew, I believe the growth of Gainesville had a lot to do with our growth of the school.
Is it? I know that you stopped working there like 15 years ago, but is it still expanding? Like,
No, after the other school, the Catholic school on the Southwest opened up, we started to have a smaller registrations. So, and I can't tell you, I haven't been there this year, so I don't know what the enrollment is. But I'm sure it's not as big as it used to be. But all the buildings still remain and are used, I imagine. We also added a few years, when I was there, right before, a couple of years before I left, we started a special needs program for special education. And we had a part-time teacher working with children who needed a little extra help. That has now since expanded into a program now that, and I don't know if the children are mainstreamed into the classrooms or not this year. I don't know, but it was special ed. We had a special ed class.
that's good. That's great.
Oh yeah. Well, we saw the need as you know, we got bigger and bigger. We'd find there were children who needed more help. So we hired a part-time teacher and started a program for the special needs. Take them out of the classroom for specialized work, one-on-one, small groups. That helped a lot. And then we expanded into the special ed.
Do you think that it being I know that personally, this wasn't like the special ed program wasn't something that you were like directly involved with, but as far as you can tell, do you think that it being a Catholic school impacts the special ed program at all?
Well, I have a friend who is a special ed teacher, and I've worked when I first came to Gainesville, I subbed at the school on 16th that is special ed. And I think special ed teachers have exactly what Catholic school teachers have. They have a warmth, a family. You almost have to be able to work with special needs children. You have to love them like crazy. And I think that just carried over. Our teachers, our special ed just fell right into it. Before we started the special ed program, we took a lot of children that were special ed because their parents didn't want them in a public school for very many reasons. And I think that that showed us that we had something to offer special needs children.
I think that's incredible that this environment was established that made these parents feel feel more comfortable. I know, like just from having gone to a public school, special ed is definitely underfunded and undercared for in most places.
Yes. Sad. I have a friend whose daughter has a special needs child in California, and they would love to move to Florida, but she said, I can't, you don't have the facilities for my child in Florida. I just couldn't afford to, take care of my child like they can in California. Mm-hmm. So Florida is needing more of that. So.
Well, it sounds like this special ed program is becoming a point of pride that so many people are a lot more like, they feel more welcome into it.
I believe it is. I think it happened, as I said, the program, the classroom itself for special needs children happened after I left. So it was, but what we worked on, we had so many parents thanking us for the attention given to the children who were struggling to learn. Everybody has different learning styles, and it's hard for one teacher to approach all of them. So to have a pullout where you can concentrate on the child's needs helped a great deal, and the parents appreciated that.
Now, I know you said that like you haven't been able to go back to that school this year because of the pandemic, but like before, like between the time that you retired and this past like year, were you visiting regularly?
Regularly, yes, I'd go often. Sometimes they love baked goods. I'd bring some baked goods because I love to bake, and just visit each of the teachers that I remember. As I said, now there are a lot that are new, don't know me, but I still go back. I did. I haven't been this year. I probably won't this whole year, but I'll send them. We send them gifts, which is nice. So the school itself helps because the school's always struggling, you know.
I mean, have you enjoyed since you've like uh, come to St. Patrick's doing that like extra community work with the children?
I do not. I made it. They wanted me to sub, and I said no, I won't do that because I know that what happens. I just said I'll come visit, but that's all. I've done some judging of contests and things like that, showing up at their fairs, their special things. I was with a friend teaching a course to the 8th graders on etiquette for a few years. I did that, so that's really my only involvement.
It sounds like it's still very tight knit even after you've gone, right?
Oh yes, it is. It's a warm, friendly place.
Um, what are these contests that you mentioned that you were judging for?
They speech contests,
Really?
science fair. We when I was a science teacher many years ago, we decided to get our kids involved in the science fair. So I've judged that a couple of times, and the kids would go to the county and show their projects, the winners. So, what other kind of contests they have? Writing, speech contests. Did I say speech? Spelling. You know, anything the kids compete in. Public speaking was a big thing. I don't remember doing that in my elementary career or in the public schools I taught at. But they, from when when I started there was always a speech contest. Children had to learn to speak publicly, which and I have parents, I have students come back and tell me it helped them a great deal.
Yeah, I am. I know from speech and debate has definitely like skyrocketed in popularity among these schools. I wasn't part of a team until I came to UF. And like I started judging like, these little middle schoolers with their speeches. And it's very entertaining. I think they're very like passionate about something that otherwise you'd be like,
What? What? Yeah, they're cute. Kids are wonderful.
um, we've,
Pretty
uh,
much. Pretty much did a lot.
we've spoken for about an hour. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to express about like maybe the church, your own experiences as a Catholic, anything at all?
I believe the Catholic Church has come a long way from when I was a child. And I think it embraces the large population, what we should be doing as Christians, embracing all people. And I'm pleased that our church has opened up a lot to that. And I'm happy to be a Catholic.
Does what exactly does it mean to you to be a Catholic now?
I don't know if it's so much being a Catholic as having a deep spirituality with God. I think that's one thing we never discussed as youngsters. It was, as I said, it took my son to tell me that Jesus was his friend. Until then, it was always the church and the rigor and the routine, the sacramentals. It was all, law. I think we've come a long way, and I'm glad about that because it brings a face to the church.
Well, That about wraps up our interview. I thank you once again for agreeing to speak with me today. I think that your story is a gift, and it means a lot to the community that you've chosen to share it. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for selecting me.